Hemshech Hayim Beis, Volume 1. We're middle of chapter 182. Which is a discussion about Torah. That in Torah there are two dimensions. There's that dimension we can call hiskashrus, where it needs to be bound to the divine because the Torah manifests and engages and relates to existence. He discussed all these levels of existence. The Torah on earth obviously talks about real, physical, material matters. Even in the spiritual Bri and Yitzirah, it still speaks about existence in a spiritual form. He used a few examples. The laws about leprosy and the law of barter, of exchanging a cow for a donkey, how it's in spiritual worlds. And then even in Atzilus, where it speaks about it as he puts it in the Lakus, in the divine structure, it still says there's Talshus, it's still part of the order. So that part of the Torah he called all the outer dimension of Torah. And there, you can say hiskashrus, because the Torah is addressing things that are so-called beyond, outside of the realm of the divine. Even Atzilus is not outside of the divine, but it's outside of beyond the structure. It's already in the structure of existence. On the other hand, there's the other part of Torah we learned earlier, Shashrim Lefonov. Though he's not using those exact words here, but it's clear he's talking about that's the inner pleasure, that's the Pnimius HaTorah. It's the pleasure within Torah, which is L'mayla Masrag, higher than comprehension. Tainug, when someone has pleasure, you're immediately saying there's something going on that's more than the regular. A regular state of being, let's say comprehension even, is not pleasure. Pleasure, delight. We're talking on all levels. As he said, whatever it is L'mayla Mikalim. It's higher than containers. It transcends containers. Right. It's a form of ecstasy, you could say. Ecstasy is beyond and outside of the containers. So that's the deeper and inner dimension of Torah. You can call it Tal, the Tal of Torah, the dew, or level of Atik. But the other one is Arich, as it relates to existence. Then, chapter 182, he said, however, this is still not fully obgelegt, fully understood, not yet settled. Because in the Zohar that says about bonding to Kishin, and this higher level of Torah, here we say Yisrael v'kutshabrichu kol echad. The Torah and God are one, not just a kesher, bond of two separate things. And the outer dimension of Torah and this inner, you can call it one. There's a oneness because it's on God's terms instead of on our terms, basically. So when the Torah speaks on our terms, it's already the outer dimension. And we learned our terms begins obviously in the lowest level where you learn it for your own sake, for your connection. But even Torah on its own, that's not for the connection, also has it's addressing the terms of existence. And then there's the Torah on God's terms, that's Chul Echad. Now, this is still not fully settled yet, not yet fully understood, because the same Zohar that talks about bond uses the reference right there. It says in all these levels, on top of levels, which is concealed and revealed. So clearly, he's using the word bonding even on the inner Torah, on the concealed part. And we just said that the inner part, you don't use the word kesher, you use the word chad, achdus, not dveikus, unity, a total union, total fusion. So to explain this, he began to discuss. He said that in Pnimius Torah itself, there's a revealed and a hidden dimension. So in the inner Torah itself, there's going to be two dimensions. Just like in the outer Torah, there's a revealed and a hidden. There's also in the Torah a revealed and a hidden. As the Zohar Baal Eischus says, that there's Neshmasa D'Oraisa and Neshmasa. There's the soul of Torah. There's the soul of Torah. To explain this, he began by first speaking the other way around. In Nigla the Torah, even the most tangible laws, which are fully comprehended and have a logic to them. However, their foundational principles, or you could say their axioms, are not necessarily comprehensible. And he gave the example of and just for the record, I did find the source for this. This is a mimer of the Alter Rebbe, that the Alter Rebbe delivered with Kuf Ayin, I believe it's Shabbos Parsha Bahar, maybe. And so it's almost word for word from there. And Yusrei, Tav Kuf Ayin. It's an explanation of that discourse. So the piece that we learned, which was a little complicated about the Cyrus, which I'm going to review now, is taken straight from there. Actually, when you learn it there, it's a little clearer because it's more concise. So he brings this point that, for example, in Gemara, there's a rule, a klal, a type of principle that says that uki, as he said, that we establish that money, whoever is holding it, that it belongs the one who is controlling it is its owner. And for somebody to want to take it away from them, you have to bring proof. So the burden of proof lies on on the claimant, not on the person who is right now controlling it. And based on this principle, there are many, many, many laws. So the laws, that's where we discuss the different logic and the different scenarios, whether it fits that bill, it doesn't fit that criteria, etc. But if you come to discuss, to examine, inspect, and analyze the actual rule, you find that it's not so pure blaze. It's not just a black and white logical thing. It's an accepted principle that has a logic to it. But as he says, that you say for sure that a person who's controlling it, even when that person says, for example, the person who's claiming says it's definitely mine, and the one who's controlling it says, I'm not sure if it's mine. Even there, the rule still applies. That's not so easy to understand. Why it's such an absolute rule? Because you could question it. And the second example he gave was with the Rishuyas. What makes something a private domain, and the other thing something else public domain? We call Rishus HaYachid, Rishus HaRabim. So here too, there are many rules that derive from that principle in the laws of Shabbos. But if you start asking, what exactly defines why this is defined a private domain, this is a public domain, you could have a lot of questions. I mentioned just one basic question. Who owns the street? It's not a public domain. It's owned by the city, which is really owned by all the people in the city. They pay their taxes. No one open. So just because it's a bunch of partners that own it, doesn't why it makes it a public domain. Now obviously it's public because you could explain because one person doesn't live there. But you could have 1 million people owning one house. You could have 5,000 people owning the street, so to speak. So is it the ownership? Is it the home? I mean, my point is that you accept this principle, and the principle is not an irrational one. But when you get to the court to it, like any axiom, basically as I discussed, every axiom is accepted, even though it's not completely, you can challenge it and ask many questions on it. I mentioned last time that even mathematics today, Gödel, the great mathematician, showed that in mathematics axioms are not necessarily rational. They can't be proven. Which was a chiddush because math was always seen as being the perfect logical system. Okay, point being, in other words, when you get to the foundation of some foundational principles, what we call axioms, they're not purely logic, they're accepted. I gave an example in science. Science accepts today, or it's always accepted actually, that the simplest explanation for any given phenomenon is the preferable one. So if you have 3 explanations to explain a certain reaction in nature, you look for the simplest one. No one can explain why the simplest. Maybe it's the most complex. But that's the chosen path. And there are reasons for it, because nature prefers simplicity. You'll see, like, in any situation, you go straight, why do you have to go crooked, etc. But if you challenge it, it's not airtight. In other words, logic cannot prove itself, basically. Why something is logical a certain way. The point he's making here is that even the Galia, even the revealed part of Torah, that mamish, we're not talking about mysticism, we're talking seemingly logic about, let's say, ownership and rules that we deal with every day, is also based on principles that are more concealed from us. So it's not just, that's the bottom line. There's a foundation that's concealed. And obviously he's going to lead to this to say the same thing's the other way around. That things in Primis that are in Tzasim also have a nigla side to them. Even the things that are concealed have a revealed side. And then he goes, and then here now he brings the Kabbalistic piece, which is a little daunting because of its Kabbalistic tone. But here's what he says. I'm going to go over it again. I'll read it again inside. And I'm going to use the source because the source is shorter. I'm going to start with Alter Rebbe. It's a Hanochas Harap. It's a maimer called Shishim Him. The beer of Shishim Him Melachos, as I said, Parshas Yisrei Tovkuf Ayin, this was said.
What's that called?
What?
What's Hanochas Harap?
Rav Pinchas Reizes was one of the 5 Manichim, Manichim that would write down. He's the one, the famous story with Alter Rebbe would sometimes roll on the floor from ecstasy. He would go down and here. And there are places you actually see 3 dots because he couldn't hear the words. So you know exactly where it was.
That would happen in the middle of Mamar?
It happened. I don't know how often, but it happened. Yeah. Alter Rebbe would sow this. He would mamish.
Well, Yom Yom, it says not about a minor time. It says about like a davening time.
Yeah, but Mamar says also Mamar because he went down with him to listen. So anyway, so I'm just going to read it inside here because it's a little shorter, and then you'll see how the Rebbe Rashab adds to it. It's actually the Alter Rebbe, Pinchas' Hanacha, then the Tzemach Tzedek adds to it, and the Rebbe Rashab comes on that. So it's a little clear when you read it. First it's concise because it's just without any of the acronyms, so to speak, the additions. So he starts like this, what I just said. He says here, the expression in the pasuk in Shir Shirim goes like this: Shishim Heim Melachos, which we know are Shishim Mesechtes. Melachos are the kings, or you could say the queens actually. Yeah, Shishim Heim Melachos. There's 60 queens, and that's called the 60 Melachos. V'Shmeinim Palakshis, concubines, 80. That's the Brises. Achas Hiyenisi, and there's one. My dove, my love. So it says, so it brings the Rizal, Malachas and Mesechtes, 60 Mesechtes, Shmein and Palakshim, they're the Brises, Alamas, Ein Misper. There's a expression, Alamas means Psulis, virgins with no end. That's the expression. That goes on Halachas. So he asks the question, the whole Maimon talks about why is the Mishnah called Malachas, why is Brisa called Palakshim, and why are Psulis called, why the virgins are called alamas. Why halachas are called alamas. So I'm skipping the other 2 because that's not relevant to our discourse right here. He speaks why halachas is called alamas. Elam is same misper, like worlds with no end. So he brings that Psula, the pasuk says, Ishla Yoda. She never had intimacy with anyone, so no one knows her, is the expression. But Mela, there's a secret to them. That's how there's a mystery to them.
That's what Ila means?
Alama. Is a Psula. Mystery? Alama come from the word Helam, yeah. So he says like, Sehina Yesh Rashim B'Talmud. And he brings here right away this same rule here. Just let me just see. Derech Moshel, Uki Mameine B'Cheskes Morer Kama Oy Hametzi Mechaver Olav Haraya. Same things he brings here. Here he says Oy. Here it seems like it's part of one rule. But anyway, this principle. that you establish that the money is in the chazaka, whoever controlling it is the one that owns it. And the one who claims it, the burden of proof is on him to extract it take away from the person who's right now controlling it. This is literally the Maimer Rav Pinchas says. You see the similarity here. On this shadish, on this foundation, on this root, is the building of many logical arguments and reasons on every din related to this. However, if you come to examine and to analyze and to discuss the core root, Madua zeh, the Klal Mamoina, he says he's missing a line here or something. Or Derech Moshel Reshuyas l'Shabbos. He brings that here also. Or the domains on Shabbos. Lo nuchel lahasig l'mekerei rak acher shenitn zeh hamokel l'klal oz nuchel l'falpul l'haven taimi ha-mishnah. So we can't really fully understand. We can't understand the source. But after you tell us this foundational principle, then you can go and discuss and analyze all the different reasons of the Mishnah. Same idea, basically this idea. Yeah. So we see from this that the primary reason for the din for this law that we cannot reach, we can't comprehend. For it to be understood in logic. Because this Talmud Nikra Talmud Alomis Kihu Behelim. That's why it's called Alomis, because it's concealed. Kihu Behelim, but Ein Musik. See, this piece he doesn't bring in Ayin Beis because he's not interested in the pasuk. He's just talking about the content. But here he is. So he says that's why it's called Alomis Kihu Behelim. Ve'Ein Musik HaChochma Sateir V'Atam V'Zel Psula V'ish Lo Yoda. And that's the pasuk that says, a psula, the ishla yada, and no man knows her. What's the psula in Torah? So in other words, the Torah has not yet been married, so to speak. When Matan Torah, the Torah is given to Eden, as we were learning, the Torah that relates to us, it's a marriage. So we don't understand all of Torah, but there's a part of it we understand. The psula part is the Torah, so to speak. You can say it's like the shashrim lefanov. No man knows it. Ishla Yoda. And in Kunter Sachin he said the same thing. He said it was only the Eibishter knows the Torah through knowing himself. That dimension. That's what he refers to it. As I said, in Ayin Beis doesn't bring these lines, but it's just helpful to see the source. Okay. That's like a psula. No, it's not a virgin that has not yet received the hashpah, any transmission within her. And there hasn't been yet a total union between husband and wife. I mean, here it's of course the example between Torah and the Jewish people. Then he goes on and says, the Inyan is kamoisha b'chol mitzvah yesh tam nigla v'nister. Just like in every mitzvah, there's a reason, a revealed reason and a concealed one. Now he's going the other way. Apisad is also a revealed and a concealed. Now he goes to Idra Rabbah. Now he begins this Zohar. By the way, the word Idra, I looked it up. Idra is a word used for a group. When you have a group of students and a teacher among them, it's called Idra. It could be even cheder, like we say cheder in yeshiva. What's a cheder? Cheder means a room, but it's a room with people. I didn't look up the exact, but that's how it's in terms. And the Idra Rabbah was when all 10 students of Rashbi were there. That's why it's called Rabbah. And by Idra Zutta, when Rashbi was passed away, which is Idra Rabbah is in Pasha Naseh and Zohar printed. It's one gathering. It's not the large gathering. And Idra Zutta is because 3 of them had passed away already before. So by Idra Zutta there was only 7 Talmidim. I'm just giving you the little trivia.
By the bed
That's in Parsha Hazinu. So that's Rabba and Zuta. Rabba meaning the large group, and Zuta the small. Remember the Rebuah we talked about? I figured that out too already. I looked it up. I'm just filling in some gaps. Eyyeh b'Rebuah is dam. Rebuah means a gematria can work like this. Eyyeh, the gematria of Eyyeh is 21. Okay? Aleph is 1. The 2 Hayes is 10. Yud is 10. So 21. Rebuah means when you make a gematria, but you go in progressive order. Rebuah means 4 times. So you do like this. Aleph.
I got you.
Understand?
What you square the word.
So you have the 21. And right, exactly. That adds up to 44. Because Aleph is 1. Then you do Aleph Hey is 6, so that's 7. Then Aleph Hey Yud is 16. That's 23. Then Aleph Hey Yud Hey is 21. It's 44. So it's gematria, but b'Rebuah, meaning you're basically doing the gematria of each letter and then summing the total of them. Yeah, that was called Rebuah.
So Aleph is calculated 4 times and Hey 3 times.
Exactly.
There's
another way to put it. The Rebuah really means yeah.
It's kind of like Nana.
Fine. So now you can find new gematrias in your name that go beyond the original one. Okay. So now he goes into the Zohar. I just want to see how the Tzemach Tzedek does this. We're doing a study in comparisons right now. Is that good? Okay.
Are you saying that the virgin is the outer dimension of the hidden level? Is that what we're saying? Because it's not bound yet, it hasn't received yet. So it's the outer level of the hidden level?
Yeah, it's the inner level. It's the hidden level. Psula.
You said it didn't receive yet, so it's not. You said earlier that if something is bound, there has to be 2 things that are bound, and the hidden level of the Torah is not bound; it's one with Hashem. But even the hidden level has.
We didn't get to that yet. We're not at that part yet. Now we're just establishing that there is a hidden and there's a revealed. He didn't yet get into what the one and what's not one. At this point, the yichud here, first of all, is also not yichud with God; it's the yichud with us, with our understanding of it. So this part of the Torah remains concealed. Yes, technically you could say it's yichud with Hashem, but not a yichud below. That's why it's yichud, not his kashrus. But he didn't get to that yet, huh?
Submission is in the same discussion.
Well, Bryce and Mishnah is talking more revealed. They're already. That's what we learn. The halamis is the concealed and within.
Because I was asking for the name, the parish of Mishnayos, or Mishnayos parish of Bryce.
Bryce comes from the word bar, outside of. So the Mishnah was said by the Tanoim, but Bryce was learned by the Tanoim, but not in the base measure. So it's considered Bryce. Yeah.
Connected.
No. Anyway, see here he says the following. I just want to see the Tzemach Tzedek's expression, since we're learning it all inside. As you see, here it goes like this.
What's it for?
This, Eratera, this is Hanochas Rapinchas. Okay, she brings exactly the same language. What is that noise? Okay. So basically the same language. So here he says, the Eratera is adding some lines that the Rebbe Rashab obviously uses. But there's the same idea. ולכן נקרא תלמוד הלומס, כי הוא בהלם, ואין המושג החוכמה דתרא, הטעם, וזהו פסולה, ויש לה יודש בפסוק, וזהו כמו פסולה שעדיין לא קיבל השפעה. He adds in the parentheses, Roshena Leimer, Tzemach Tzedek explaining this piece, that why it's called Psula, and there was not a Yichud yet, a complete Yichud, union. Roshena Leimer, he means to say, She'ein nimshach gilui hatam, mebchinas teresh b'ksav, hanikra chasen, el b'chinas hatam, teresh b'peh. There was not yet the tam from the written Torah, which is called the chasen, has not yet been transmitted to the Talmud, the oral Torah. Mashenka b'Mishnah Braisa shenikra malachas. So Pelakshim, Mishnah and Braisa, which are called malachas, the queens and the Pelakshim, the concubines, nimshach hayichud kanal. They did get this yichud because they have a relationship. Because the reasons, they come from a very high level, Chabad, and that cannot literally be real. Mashenka Mishnah Shu Chagas Yochel is Galas. Mishnah and Braisa, which is Nehi. Mishnah is Chagas, Chagas, the Midas. Braisa is Nehi. He says that earlier, I assume. So that can be revealed. But Chabad, the deeper secret knowledge within Chabad, that's Alomis, Emisper, that's the halachas of the Gemara. There's concealed elements. I know it's interesting because usually you say the Gemara is more revealed than the Mishnah. The Mishnah is short and brief. But the Mishnah is the statement of the halacha. The Gemara is trying to understand the reasons. Once you get into the reasons, it shows you that there are reasons you can't get to. Mishnah is, we're told, what the Mishnah is telling us, the revealed, this is the law. So the Gemara is where the things are more concealed. Even though obviously the Gemara is the concealment within the Mishnah. But that's how he explains it here. And here he goes again. Then he adds here, same thing, is also nigel v'nister, and he brings now the Zohar that the Rebbe Rasha began with. Remember the Zohar where it says Baal Eitzcha? The Shmosa Daraisa and the Shmosa and the Shmosa. Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek adds that. That's where the Rebbe Rasha. Now begins the Zohar. So let's learn this inside. I'm going to learn it in the Alter Rebbe's Maimer, and then we'll take it from there. Okay. I find it fascinating, I don't know about you, to see the tracing from the root to where we are. So he says like this, the Alter Rebbe. It's explained in Idr Rabbah. A positive, what do we say? Kavtseisov taltalim shcheres. The edges of your curls, it's talking about hair, are dark. It says dark like a erev, like a raven. So he says, Shehu b'chinesh shayre shcheres dezah. So in Idr Rabbah, he says, these are the hairs of Zah, of Midas. Zohar Midas. V'hu misagin umedachin daraisa. The actual lashon is, as he brings here, that dachin u'misavin, that there was the refined, and what we call misavin was more the negative, the positive and the negative, right? So here it's very brief, but if you look in the Zohar, he's talking about these are the reasons of the Torah. And Medachin are talking about mitzvah sesa, mitzvah leisesa, the positive and the negative. To compare all of them to get it clear. So he says here, it says, Mavur b'derabah, k'asleis tatam shcheres ke'erev, v'chin seiris shcheres dezah, v'sagdem be'dachin, u'mesavin daraisa. Yeah. And what clings onto these hairs are the so-called dach, what do we say? Dach is more dach. The pure and the impure. What he really means is the positive and the negative, which is the mitzvah sesa, mitzvah leisesa. Good. Then, seemingly, there's a contradiction. There's another Zohar, this is what he said brings next, reading on. We already learned this, so, but I'll explain it all. But Tikkunim, in Tikkunim Zeir, he says, Isa, the Dalas Reishcha Kargamon, and the curls of your hair and your head are like purple. It's another pasuk in Shir Shirim. These are all verses in the Song of Songs. Heimatayim Matera. These are the reasons of Teira. V'hem b'chinesayt is the nukva. These are the hairs of nukva, not zah. Zah is zachar, usually refers to the male. Always does. And this is now the hairs of the nukva, of the feminine. Then it says, so this here you see they're called dark, and here they're called purple. It says, be'emes le'sasra hadad. In truth, they don't contradict each other. Again, I'm reading here, and then we'll go back to the Rebbe Rashab. Ki moichin de zah, shem shorshem b'sayres the arachampen. Because the intellect, the mind of Midas, which is we're talking about the dark hairs, their root is in the Cyrus and the hairs that are in Keser, in Arachampen. Remember, Zoyrampin means the small face. Arachampen is the long face. So the Midas are rooted in the lower level of Keser, Arachampen, from those hairs. Ein yochelove bizgalus tam klal al pisod. They cannot come revealed in any revealed reason at all. Al pisod. Rak bo bizgalus ay decided the zah. They can only be revealed through the hairs of zah. That's why they express through hair. Hair is like, remember, the physical body evolves from the spiritual. The hair is a reflection of something coming from the level of intelligence, but it comes like from the mind in thin strands. So it's a very diminished flow of energy. So as you cut a hair, for example, you don't feel anything. You pull it, you feel. So it has a nerve ending. So it has a nerve, so it's some not connected, but it's considered to be, it's not just a metaphor. In the spiritual world, remember, these are all levels of emanation. So hairs always reflect on a very diminished flow from a very great level, high level. If you want to get it to a lower level and you can't really get it there, you get it through hairs. It's like think of it like thin wires, basically. Very thin wires that bring you something, but it's very diminished. So it can be contained. So that's what he's saying going on here. I'm reading it here and then we'll read it. Okay. Remember when we learned Ayin Beis, you saw that some of the Alter Rebbe Rashab was writing in parentheses, he was explaining these lines. That's why I'm reading it before the explanation, just so we can then go back. Okay. So in the chambers of Zah, how does the revelation come? So in the chambers of Zah, which are wide chambers, but the revelation from there comes just like strands of hair. That's why it's concealed. That's what he's saying here. V'zeu kavtseisov taltalim, and this is the meaning that the edges of the curls, haniskir b'zeh shem b'chinesayt is the Zah. Fine, that's level one. The same thing, the same thing in the intellect of Nukva, of Malchus, of the feminine, Shashar Shemesayt is the Zah. Its root is from the hairs of Zah. So it goes like this. From Arich come these thin wires, strands into Zah, to Midas. From Midas it comes into Malchus. Also, again a diminished flow. So he's saying like this. So now the Cyrus, as they come into Nukva, which is where we're talking the second pasuk, he said it was the Cyrus of Nukva. Remember, he said it was the feminine, not Zah. And these are purple. Here he says that the Cyrus they too cannot come revealed in the worlds of Biyah, because Malchus now feeds Biyah, feeds the worlds of Bria Tzira below it. Rak derech Cyrus, only in a form, only through a path only through these thin strands. They're Meshri Mechen. There it's called like the waste or the leftover from Mechen. Hair is called, as I said, comes out of the skull. Okay. Now we're all talking here the skull. The question is whether you're talking about the skull of the feminine dimension, you're talking about the skull of the masculine dimension, which all rooted in Arechampin. Okay, good. V'zeu dalus reishcha kargomon. And this is the second pasuk. That the curls, the locks on his head, kargomon, are like purple. Why purple? Shem gimel gvonin, because purple is a mixture of colors. Black is black. Purple is considered to be the mixture of red and usually red and blue. Purple. Tiferes. 3 colors. I forgot which one is the third. Argoman. What does Rashi say in Teruma? He says by Argoman. I remember. L'chein b'pnimius yesh gam ken nigla b'nister b'taimei hatera. And that's why in Pnimius, the Tzemach Tzedek is going to deal with this, what this means exactly. That's why in the Pnimius, there's also revealed and concealed. B'taimei hatera, the reasons of Teira. Hainu be'echol is the Zoh. Shem min kavtzeis of taltalim. Because in Zoh, in the chambers of Zoh, you have a revealed dimension. But that revealed dimension is rooted through the hairs in a place that it's concealed from Zoh. So in the revealed, you also have it concealed. That's what he's saying. So in other words, when you say that the Torah, like he says in Zohar, that these hairs, what are these locks of hair, these curls of hair, are dark, are referring to, he says, the reasons of the Torah that have in them for both the positive and the negative mitzvahs. That's what cling to them. What does it mean? Why hair? Because the mitzvahs have in them something that's revealed. That's what relates to you. But it's rooted in a place that's not revealed. That's essentially what he's saying, and just in simple English. Why it has to be spoken, this is the way Kabbalah speaks. Because it's explaining, it's grounded in the Pasuk and Shir Shirim. It's cryptic. It is cryptic. But when it comes down to what he's really saying is that this is saying that there's something that's revealed and something that's concealed. That's all you got to remember. If you want to know how it fits into the Pasuk, it's talking about hair curls. Hair curls are just an outer dimension, you see it. So something's revealed because something's there, but it's really more concealed than revealed. Think of it like this. Think of hair is like, let's call it like the tip of the iceberg of something going on inside. You know? Yeah.
These are options of making. Nothing it's rooted in options of making. Not anything to dissolve. Also has silence. It gives us a revealed aspect of the hidden Torah. What we're saying. Something's understanding.
We'll soon get to it. Right now, that's what he said now. The premiers is Nigla and Nister. Remember, he's speaking both ways. In Sod, in the secret, there's also a revealed part. In the revealed, there's also a hidden part. Here, seemingly, he's talking about the revealed, because Zoh is Midas is Mishnah. So even in Mishnah, but it's rooted in Arich. So even the revealed, it's like what he said, the reasons for Meitzim Mechaver, taking that possession, or the domains, revealed, this is what we discuss. That's Zoh. In Zoh, you study that. But if you want to get to the bottom of it, it really is rooted through the hairs in Arich Hampen, and that remains a mysterious secret. That's how he's explaining it. That level. Okay. So L'chein b'pnimis yesh gam ken nigla v'nista b'taimei hatera zeu b'pnimis taimei hatera shal pi sod. That's what he says. This is the inner dimension, the secret of the Torah, that's according to Sod, which seemingly is a little confusing. So Tzemach Tzedek deals with this. We'll get to it in a minute. Because is he talking here the secret within Nigla, or is he talking the revealed within the secrets? So it's not so clear from this line. It's not so clear, but Tzemach Tzedek discusses this. So don't.
Would you mind rereading the line, please?
L'chein b'pnimis yesh gam ken nigla. That means it's also in the inner. There's also a revealed dimension. Uvenister b'taimei hatera. Oh, one second. Let me just go back a second. Hold on a second. After he finishes, it says this is that the hairs of Zah are the intellect of Zah is rooted in the hairs of Arachampin that cannot come revealed in a tam, and is only revealed through the hairs. He says the same thing on the lower level. The intellect of Malchus Nukva is rooted in the hairs of Zah and cannot come down Biyah only again through here. We got that, right? Then he concludes. Now he says, and that's the second. Dal Soresh Kagon, the Gimel Gon Ulechem Bepnimis Yesh Gam Ken Nigla, and that's why in the inner you also have a revealed dimension. I'm sorry, I didn't read it right. Ulechem Bepnimis Yesh Gam Ken Nigla v'Nister b'Taimei HaTeirah. That's why in the inner dimension you also have a revealed and a hidden in the reasons of the Torah. Hainu Beichol is the Zah. Which means in the chambers of Zah, you have two dimensions, the Nigla and the Nister. Shehem min kiftsesa of taltalim. That's from the edges of the curls of hair. That's what he means here. Now, min kiftsesa, I see from the interpretation, kiftsesa could actually mean the root of the hairs.
Sounds that way because we're talking about the
Arechampin. Okay, fine. So you have two dimensions. You have the revealed, what you see in Zah. That's the revealed. The primis yesh gamkin nigla, and you have nister. That's just the hairs are showing you that there's something that's coming from a place that's hidden. Zel bepnimius taimi hatera shal pisod. That's in the pnimius taimi hatera. That's according to the secret. In other words, he's teaching the first pasuk, the dark hairs from Zah. He's teaching it on pnimius hatera. That's the pnimius hatera. The pnimius hatera. The Primus has a revealed part, but most of it is concealed. But it has a concealed part that from Arechampin. Then he says, now comes the second pasuk. From the intellect of Nukva comes also a transmission and a revelation in the 7 chambers of Bria. Aval he hamshachu. Aval hoya amshachu derech Cyrus meisen mechen ki etzem machach mit the nukva that says ein yocholovi basrag bebriya. But this transmission is also through hairs from the leftovers of the mind, because core intelligence of chachma of atzilus of malchus of atzilus of nukva ein yoch cannot come in comprehension in briya. Well, the chen sham in b'chinas naidus subsulis. That's why they're young maidens and virgins. Shaloi hoyi yichud gomer. There was no full union. Rakamoi ame evriya sheksiv gover shalayad of yesh kri v'ksiv. Okay, here's already going the language of this mimer here. In other words, it goes like this. This is what was not understood. Mishnah is Zah. I want to just see it in the actual mimer. I'm almost sure, I'm ready to say, that Mishnah is... Yeah, here we go. Mikra Mishnah Talmud, it says, Netzchaim, Mishnah is Bekelim Amtsoim the Nukva di Yitzira. Talmud is in Bria, Mishnah is in Yitzira, Mikra is Basiya. Sometimes it says, Mikra Mishnah Talmud, Bechin is Chabad Chagas Nehi. That's it.
You were going the other way around.
Yeah. Basically, it goes like this. The brises are the way it goes down into Biyah, that's for sure. The Mishnah is Midas, it's also on a lower dimension. And when you go into higher, that's more the secrets of the Torah. So bottom line, what he's saying here is that in Zah, you're talking about Primus HaTorah. So you have something that's revealed, but it's rooted in Arechampin that's concealed. Malchus, which goes into Biyah, which is already, now you're talking about the Mishnah, says the revealed that we know, which we learn in the Gemara, but it has the secrets of the reasons behind the Mishnahs that we just learned, Metzim Mechaver El Varaya and so on.
Is that called Alamas?
That's Alamas, yeah.
Alamas in this one.
Okay, what's
This goes on this part where it goes through, etc.
1 second. Okay. So now the Tzemach Tzedek, let's read the Tzemach Tzedek and then we'll read Ayin Beis. How's that? Fine. So Tzemach Tzedek, when he brings this, he brings Kimavur Be'idra Pasuk Kivtseis of Taltalim Shcheres Kerev Shu B'china Seir Shcheres Dezah Mesagdim Be'dachin and Mesavin Daraisa, like we just said, that in the Kivtseis Taltalim the he said the clumps, Kavtsesav, you could say, are clumps. Of the curls of hair that are dark like a raven. These are the dark hairs of Zah, where Misagdim Bey, that cling to it, the positive and negative, that he calls it, basically the positive mitzvahs and the negative mitzvahs. The curls on your head are like purple. Kargaman. Heim Taimetev. Heim B'chinesayt is the Nukva. These are the hairs of the Nukva, lower level. U'be'emes le'sasra hadad. And this be'emes does not contradict. I'm just reading it over in Tzemach Tzedek's way. One is dark, one is dark. No. One is dark and one is purple. Wow.
One's a Zohar, one's a Mahos.
What's your contradiction?
Different colors. Why are they different colors?
And why are they in different levels? Zohar and Mahos? And this is the exact language that the Rishon brings.
This is exactly what he's bringing from here. Yeah, he's saying. I think the contradiction seems to be the color, actually.
So he explains it.
Because that's what that would answer the question. The levels make it different colors.
Black.
Basically, the Leisasa Adad, the meaning that these two types of hairs are not a contradiction. They're two different levels. He's going to explain what they mean. I understand.
Black means intellect?
I don't know. Why are you jumping? Let's understand what he says. You're trying to figure out things that are beyond what he says.
We were talking about that
Does black mean more hidden?
Huh?
Does it mean more hidden?
You could say black is hidden, but he doesn't spell out why it's black. I think the contradiction is which is Taimei Torah. That's what I think the contradiction is. Because on both of them it says these are the reasons of the Torah.
Yeah.
So the question is which levels of Torah. That's what I think is the contradiction, not the colors. It doesn't discuss the colors here. Yeah, Taimei Torah. Because in Ayin Beis, actually the question is very clear, because both of them it says Taimei Torah. And here, for some reason, he doesn't use the word Taimei Torah. Taimei Torah means, but Tikkun Zeh it says that. In other words, which level of here are the reasons of the Torah? The answer is going to be, you're talking about two levels of Torah. The hidden Torah, or the revealed Torah. And both have both dimensions. That's really what it comes down to. That's what we're getting to clarity here.
Can you point out the differences between the three levels of the new code?
You're already there? I'm trying to understand Pshat here. You're ready? You understand Pshat already?
I assume we know everything already. My apology. Okay, go ahead.
So Lois Asra Adad, it's not a contradiction. So I'm just reading now that Tzemach Tzedek says, because he adds some. Because the intellect of Zah, again, the intellect of Midas, Shehem Shorsham, their root is from the hairs of Arechampin, which is Keser, the lower level Keser. So here he says, V'hainu memazal v'neitzer v'nake. That means, from the mazel of Neitzer Nake, the mazolis. Remember, there's the 12 signs. They're there in Arechampin. And two of them are v'neitzer v'nake. This is from the Pasuk that talks, the Lashon. You know the Pasuk that says, the Yud Gimel Yud Gimel Midas Harachimim. So v'neitzer v'nake, that's the root of these hairs. Mekablim avo. This is the parentheses which some of the Rebbe Rashab brings. Hainu memazal v'neitzur nakim mekablim av abba ve'ima hameichin u'mashpirim eisen lezah. He's explaining what does it mean it's rooted. What let's be specific. Midas are here. Arachampen is the kesser is here. Midas are here. Let's just say the Arachampen is here. The hairs go where? There's a brain to go through. So he's explaining how it works. The mazel, the hairs are rooted in Arachampen in the mazel of Neitzer V'Naka, from which Abba Ve'ima, the mind, receives and transmits that to Zah. That's one way he explains it. The Gam Keitze decided Arachampen, and also the Keitze we call the ends of the hairs of Arachampen Atzmai Makka Be'erev the Zah. So think of it. So there's two ways that decides. One of them they flow through mazel through the mind. Another is like the hair, long hair that flows that strikes the back of a person or a woman. It's like the hair that runs down, and where does it go? All the way to the back. Long hair. So it's also hitting Zah, but on the back of Zah, not the front. The hair that goes back. That's what he says here. And that's through this the Zah, Meichin of Zah is Chachma Bina Das of Midas. Das breaks into two. That here that falls back breaks Das into two. It has that impact. This is.
What does that mean practically?
The practice isn't practical. This is spiritual. I mean practically.
Avoda.
Remember, you see, you have to have. I already gave the preface. It sounds weird because we're so used to the human body as we know it. But you have to remember, the human body was created in the image of the divine. So all this exists on divine levels. Before it became a body like we know it here and a head and this, it's spiritual levels, and every part has its spiritual component. So you have to take out. Don't imagine it in a physical way at all. Just think of it as levels, and we are created in that image, not that created in our image. See, when you read this, it sounds weird, but here, there's this. So someone says hair falling back, that's what we relate to, hair falling back. But you have to think of it the other way around. That first began, God emanated a level called Keser. That Keser one day will become the crown of our heads, as it goes lower down. Then He created a thing called hair, that would come out of Keser. That here would draw energy into lower levels. Chachma, Bina, Das, Midas, and so on. That's how you have to think. You have to think of it completely metaphorically. Here absolutely shouldn't be thinking it in the past. Then, the human body is a reflection of that. The real Kabbalists were able to align the body to those dimensions. They understood where they saw somebody. Just like when you see a tree. You see a tree. Makubal, or someone spiritually, will see a tree as being an expression of a particular level. Like, you see fire. Someone who knows Chassidus Kabbalah will say, I see Gvura. You see water. I see Chesed. I'll give an example. You see tears come out of someone's eyes. You right away know they're feeling sad. Someone will say, what do you mean? It's just wet tears. Wow. How do you know they're feeling sad? Maybe it's just water. You say, because we know human beings don't just cry. There's a reason. Crying is just a physical manifestation of an emotion. Emotions we can't see, but tears we could see. No one's going to say, first you cry and then you feel sad. So you have to think the same way. You see, we're so programmed, so distorted, to think everything begins from here, then we try to, it's the other way around. That's always a preface that you have to say before. This is a given before you learn this even. So then, the fact that why does hair fall back? Because that's how it works above. The Cyrus of Arachampen spreads. You'll say, okay, so why don't we all wear long hair? Fine, there's discussions, by the way. Why women don't cut their hair, why men cut their hair, covering hair, not covering the Nazir, the Mitzvah, the Kayin. This hair is a big topic. I never finished it. I'm in the middle of writing a long article on the hair because people want to know. If you really want to understand all the halachas around here, you have to understand it. It doesn't make any sense, Begashmis. Why a woman has to cover her hair. And a sheitel is fine. Because people think it's about provocative. It's not. It's about power. Here is a very spiritual power, and that's a lot. It's a big discussion because you see, look at the contradiction. Before someone's married, girls wear long hair, boys don't. That's something they're married. Women cover their hair and men don't. Explain that. We have beards, they don't. Then we're supposed to cut the hair in our heads, but not the hair here. Explain all these contradictions. Wherever you twist, there's a contradiction. The Levim and the Midbar were told to shave every day. Yeah. No, I think the beard's not. I think, but I'm not. But their hair, every day they took haircuts. Yeah. Bald was beautiful for them. And then there's the Mitzvah, that the way to purify him is to cut. A Nazir, on the other hand, he grows his hair as part of his strength, Shimshon. So what's going on? Is hair positive, negative? I mean, it's a lot of contradictions. Chassidus talks about it directly, but it's written very cryptically. You have to begin with these long introductions that hair is representative. Even you see in advertising, for example, look how hair is used, women's hair. It's very sexual. It's a very major part of, look at any type of ad where they're selling something of that nature, perfume, or this, you'll always see how hair is used. Hair, so it's more powerful than it seems. It's not just a nice hairdo or something like that, It's interesting. So bottom line is, to go back here, so these are called, the article is titled Hairy Thoughts. Okay, so there's two ways, in other words, so this parenthesis explains two ways of how the Cyrus. So this is metaphorical for what? For a high dimension basically coming into a lower dimension. That's the key that he wants to. How is he explaining the contradiction of Taimei Torah? He's explaining it how it evolves. So that's level one. Ein yechem lovi bizgalos tam klal. Afal pisaid. That's what he adds. In the Maimer of the Alter Rebbe, it doesn't say af. That was a confusing line to me. Let me just see. Afal pisad. So there, what do we know from this now? That there in Zoh, the Midas, the intelligence of the Midas, the intellect within the emotions, are rooted in the hairs of our company. There, they cannot come in a revealed way at all, even a pisad. So he says, Afal pisad. Rakbo his galus they side is the Zoh. What?
What would it mean, his galus al pisad?
A pisad at least is revealed that the Kabbalistic reason. He says even that's not of a pisad. A reason you can give a Kabbalah, you can say I don't know, for example, why this is Shusay Yachid, Shusay Rab, but I can tell you Api Kabbalah why. Even that's not revealed. That's what he's basically saying. In other words, he's basically pointing out that in Sod there's revealed and there's concealed. The revealed part is that's why he says, that's why it comes through Cyrus. 1 second, that's just written. Rak boy bizgal said they Cyrus the Zoh, Beichol is the Zoh. It comes revealed only through these narrow, think of it like these, as I said, narrow wires. Cyrus the Zoh, the hairs of Zoh. The hair of Zoh basically is the hair of the male beard. That's really what he's saying. Zoh here is the beard. Marich is here, Zoh is here. A hair in a woman is not a beard, but she has hair also. Longer hair, so on. Obviously he's talking here in spiritual levels. So he says, so it can only come through these strands of hair. That's how it comes. V'zeu kavtzeis of taltalim hanisker b'zeir. And this is the clumps or the edges or whatever you want to call it of the curls of the, what do we call them, the swigs? Not the curls, the locks of hair. Mentioned is there. Shem side is the Zoh. These are the hairs of Midas. Shebehem teila dachin u'mesavin. In them is teila, is the clings or is the no, but here teila doesn't mean pens. It means teila like clinging on. That's where they hang on, so to speak.
Clean doesn't mean dependent.
Sometimes it means, here it doesn't mean teila means to hang. Some teila is to hang something. Because before he said the misachdin bay. Yeah, it means that's where it's like fruit on a vine. Dachin misavin, the positive, the negative. This is the revelation of the reasons of the Torah that revealed in the Cholos of Zoh. But they're really only a diminished reflection of things that are concealed. That's what he's saying here. Then he brings v'ayim ashkas bebir the shcheda and even nova the mavur sham the shcheda is b'chinas nimshach v'makam gavoy ma'ed ayin sham hetiv. He's bringing here what we learned before in Ayin Beis. In the beer of Moshe he says that the root of this is in a very high place because shcheda. This is how Torah comes. That's the shcheda, the darkness.
Yeah.
The dark is how the neshama comes down below where everything is concealed. But that brings v'nova and I'm beautiful because through the learning down below you reach that. So he's connecting this whole piece here. So in other words, the Torah in the Hiskashrus has the Maila, the Torah as it comes down, which a lot of it is concealed, and we only have the dimension that's revealed is the outer dimension. He says that reaches a deeper place than the hidden Torah above. That explains why it's Shcheda, by the way. That's the dark. Yeah.
We talked about that.
Kamoi Kain, now goes the second level.
Since I'm talking about that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So now this Hiskashrus brings to that. That's the Hiskashrus, the outer dimension. Kamoi Kain b'chinas Meichen Chabad, the Nukva. Same thing, the Meichen, the intelligence of Chabad, of Nukva, of Nekeva, of Malchus, that is from the feminine. Sheshosha Messiah is the Zah. They're rooted in the hairs of Zah. Ein Yochalova Bizgalus Be'elim Biyah. Rak Derech Cyrus. They cannot come in a revealed way in the world of Biyah only through the hairs. Shem Meishri Meichen, which are the leftovers of the mind. V'zeh v'dalas reishcha kargoma shem gimel gvonin. And this is v'dalas reishcha, that the locks on your head are like argomen. These are the three colors. Well, l'chein b'pnimis yesh gam ken nigla v'nister. And that's why in Pnimius there's also revealed and hidden the time HaTeira and the reason of Teira. Hainu be'echol is the Zoh. Shesham Hagoli mebchinas kafteis of Taltalim. Okay. In the cholos of Zoh, in the chambers of Zoh, you have this hidden and the revealed and the concealed, and that's those locks of hair. Zeu b'pnimius time HaTeira shal pisod. This is in the inner dimensions of Teira, the reasons of pisod. So there's a revealed and concealed in the concealed itself. And the second level, from the locks on the head that are gomang, purple, that's from the mind of nukva, of the feminine. Also comes a transmission and revelation into the chambers, 7 chambers of bria. But this transmission is through hairs and the leftovers of the mind. Because the core wisdom from the feminine of Atzilus cannot be revealed in Bria. So now in a parenthesis, the Tzemach Tzedek says, Im kein hanigla shal pi hasod, zeh b'chinas dalsa reisha kargoman. Hanigla shal pi. So according to this, he's saying that the revealed the revealed part of the secrets of Torah, that's the lower level. That's Dal Soresh Chakagoman. Vanista Zeu, one second, he's not finished. Vanista Zeu Kavtseis of Taltalim. And the hidden is Kavtseis of Taltalim. O Yesh Leimer, here's the second. O Yesh Leimer, or you can say, the Kavtseis of Taltalim Zeu HaNigla. That's Shal Pi Asod. The Etzem Meichel Zeu Zeu HaNista Shal Pi Asod. And the etzem meichin of Zah, that's the nister shal pi asod, that's the concealed. V'chein benukve, dal shadeshul garam zeu tam hanigla mamish. K'inyan hametzim mechaver olav haraya kanal. O meichin benukve zeu hanishter shal zeh hatam shalei ba legole. It's 2 interpretations. Okay. So I wanted to read it inside because it's so. He has here a whole piece now about standing up. It's kind of confused. Second. Okay, now let's learn Ayin Beis. After we learn this, you guys are following this dense little piece, huh?
It's hard. You don't see it inside.
Okay, but that's where we are. What can I tell you? I can't skip. The key thing to remember is that this is real hardcore Chassidus. So the Rebbe Rashab is grounding it in the sources of Kabbalah, of Zohar, Tikkun Azar, the Psukim, obviously, the verses. And it's a dense piece, but at the end of the day, it's really just supporting the idea that he wants to convey. And that is, I go back to what I said at the beginning of the class, that there's two dimensions in Torah. There's how it relates to existence and how it's beyond. But the whole point of this exercise is understanding the interface between existence and the divine. So, if we're left to our own resources, left to our own, so we can imagine, we can climb a bit. The Torah was given to us as a gift for us to help us climb from existence to a far greater place, to transcendence. So you begin by relating to it on your level, but you always know that within it lie mysteries. And within it lie secrets that are beyond. And obviously, as you grow, those you begin to get a taste of those. They become internalized, and you discover there's always more beyond that. So this is essentially the whole point of this. So the hairs are just, it is our example. When you read Shir Hashirim, it's written in a metaphor between a husband and wife, between a lovers. The Rambam writes that it's really a metaphor between Hashem and the Jews. There's different interpretations. Some people, for example, don't, like Art Scroll's version of Shir Hashirim, they go only with a metaphor. Because when you read it, it can appear very almost erotic and sexual. And even in Kabbalah, that metaphor, because we see in Kabbalah speaks to pure people with pure ideas. The problem is when people read these things, we usually impose upon it our own distorted views on sexuality, male and female, and so on. That's why the Tzemach Tzedek writes that Kabbalah wasn't learned because people were megashim it. It's very easy to how do you say megashim? To look at it very literally and in a very coarse way, crass way. And you see, Shabtai Tzvi, Jacob Frank, and many of them, they took these ideas and they turned them into, they abused them. So Chassidus brings it back to teach us the refinement, the subtleties of it all. But when you read Kabbalah in its pure form, because it's written for pure people, it doesn't mince words. It speaks very openly, that one would call erotic language. But remember, erotic language is not a problem in a pure world. It's a problem in a screwed up world. Pure world, it's what it is, Adam and Chava were not, before they ate from the tree of knowledge, did not have clothing. They were naked. Nudity today is not seen as, nudity is a provocation, etc., etc. So, sexuality is a very pure thing. So the metaphors of Shir Hashirim, this is real, it's a Sefer in Torah, are actually revealing to us levels of Elokus, of the divine. I'm just giving you a few introductions. The reason that we're not used to studying it this way, that's why it's very you feel like it's almost like, why don't you say it in simple English? Why do you have to put it into this whole hair thing and so on? But that's the psukim, that's how it's written in Shir Hashirim. It's written in terms of like a lover speaking about the beauty of their beloved. Ani liv doidi v'doidi li. We're coming to Elul. There's also, I am to my beloved to me. That's Shir Hashirim. It's very literal. It's very graphic words. If understood purely, is beautiful. If not, it can be that. So you have to first thing, just remember these ideas were meant to be essentially expressions of divine love. Expressions. Yes, the love of a husband to a wife and wife to a husband is a model for the love of God to the human race. And so the levels Zah, Malchus, Nukva, and so on. In Kabbalah, they speak very literally. They speak about physical, or they speak even about the genitals in a very literal way. But there, you're talking about pure people. By them, there was no one tinge of this interpretation. Clean minds, as they say. So, I'm just stating that for the record. Here, obviously, this is not really overtly sexual, what we're learning here, these words. But if you understand, that's the language of Shir Hashirim. Shir Hashirim is the language of what people would call erotic. It's erotic language. But it's not. But I say in Kedusha, it's the purest form where there's no room for any Yenika Sachetzenim, as they say, any other interpretation. So what he's doing is grounding it in these verses. So let me just sum it up in my own words, and we'll learn it inside. We have to get through this. We don't want to skip anything, If I was learning with beginners, and we thought we could skip this piece and just go to the idea of it. But it's nothing wrong. Once in a while, we immerse and get a little taste of Kabbalistic Chassidus. This is real Kabbalistic Chassidus. This is real. You see, it's Kabbalah. It's hardcore. When you look in Eitz Chaim, you look in real Kabbalah. This is all the time such language, which is why you can't really understand it. Here, now that I see the evolution from the Alter Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, the Rebbe Rashab, you literally see how Chabad makes it come alive. So here's the point. When you look in the Zohar, right here is the Idr Rabbah. Okay? The Idr Rabbah begins talking, it's a whole discussion on hair. He begins talking about actually the Rashbi saying, woe unto someone who touches his beard. He starts talking about the power of hair. It's a whole thing on hair. And then he starts talking the Kabbalistic language, where did hair come from? So the beard is called Yud Gimel Tikkun Dikna, which literally means the 13 strands of the beard. Dikna in Aramaic is Zakan. Zakan is a beard. Hadras Panim Zakan. Dikna. So Yud Gimel Tikkun Dikna, the 13 strands are connected to the 13 divine attributes of compassion. Which we say in Yom Kippur and Elul start radiating. It relates also to the 13 divine attributes compassion that God revealed to Moses when he was praying for forgiveness after the Chet the golden calf. So it's a very mystical dimension. They say that Baal Shem Tov had actually a beard. You could see 13 strands. So they say you actually could see. The 13, each one has its own dimension, which is not our discussion now. But if you look at a human being, so just like as I mentioned before, every part of the human being is created in the divine image. So the hair too reflects divine emanations. What do we see in physical hair? We see a paradox. On one hand, it's part of the human being. As I said before, when you pull it, you even feel there's nerve endings. On the other hand, you can cut it off. And it's not like, God forbid, cutting a limb. There's no pain when you cut it. When you pull it. As similar to here is nails. Nails too. You cut them. They're connected. But they're more like the most outer dimension of our body, basically. Almost like the husks. And that's actually their role. What's their role, even scientifically? They're protectors. Hair is a great filter that catch a lot of the dust and bacteria that doesn't let it enter your skin. A person without hair is far more prone to infections. So hair is almost like a first buffer zone. It's like you'd put up a barbed wire so someone can get in. That's what hair does. It has other roles as well. Hair helps the sweat, helps ventilate the body. Like when it overheats. So the hair is where it releases the perspiration and so on. The hair is connected to the follicle. Bottom line, it's a protector. Same thing with the nails. The nails are protectors primarily. They protect the soft part of the skin and so on. What we're talking about here. On the other hand, so here is this dual paradox. What is it in spiritual worlds? So here represents energy, but the very diminished energy. Sometimes, for example, the talus, and the talus we wear, has two parts, right? There's the beged, the garment that we wrap, and the edges are the tzitzis. The tzitzis are compared to here. So the talus is like the or makif. And the tzitzis is like drawing down the energy, but in very narrow strands. So if you use an example from technology, a very simple example. We all have, going into our homes, we have a main line, and then it breaks into smaller lines until you get it down to very narrow each outlet. Or like you see with any electrical or any engineering, you have the main line, down to wires, down to very small wires. You have one little, let's say, thing. You open it up, you find 6 wires, like telephone lines or something like that. So think of hair as wires. They're wires of transmission. As a matter of fact, you could say wires were created are like really copying the hair. Now, we don't think of it quite that way because we don't see here what is it transmitting to us. Because you don't feel it, but it does. You know. So what do you have? So you have like this. Keser is the makif. There's atik. Atik is removed. Atik is like the deepest secrets. So atik of Torah is tal. That's the innermost dimension. Not revealed at all. From arich begins the flow from the unconscious mind. Remember, moiches tima begins the flow into the conscious mind. I'm just speaking now the structure. The human body you'll see is reflective of this. I'll explain in a moment. How? Then from the mind evolve emotions. The mind is like the central nervous system. The mind can contemplate on something and say, I'm attracted to something. I'm repelled by this. We're not talking about natural emotions that you love, let's say, your children or something, natural. That's considered more ratzon, as we learned. But moitmidus. For midus comes to nehi. Nehi is already how the outer dimension of your feelings now lead to some application. Malchus is the application as it affects the world around us. That's biyah. So the Atzilus within us works like this. It starts from a place that's the unconscious of the unconscious, atik, the unconscious mind, or the unconscious arich, the conscious mind, which is chachma bin das. Then comes the feelings, then come the outer feelings, application, and interacting with that which is outside of you. So if you're Atzilus, here's how it's structured. The unconscious is the crown of your head, the skull, Galgalta. The unconscious is even beyond the skull, actually. You can't really talk about it. You talk about it more like a hovering element. The skull is like the unconscious. The brain is the conscious. The emotions, the heart, the torso is Chachma bin Chesed Gvura Tiferes. The mind is right brain, left brain, center brain, Chachma bin Das. The right arm, the left arm, the heart, Chesed Gvura Tiferes. The legs, right leg, left leg, and then the center, male and female, are the sexual organs. So that's the human body. Netzach Yesod Malchus, right? You want to interact with someone outside of you, that's already the application, that's already going into your biyah. Whatever you interact with someone outside of you, or anything outside of you, is your Atzilus interacting with biyah outside of you. That's the structure. I suppose on a personal level. On a collective level, it's also true. Shabbos is, for example, Atzilus. The weekdays is biyah. So you have this anywhere you go, you'll find this model. I'm just trying to bring this to some logical discussion here. Okay? So now where do the hairs come into play? What are the hairs? The hairs are the so-called, they balance an equation of dealing with the so-called, no, not just the transfer, the dissonance and the distance between levels. How, for example, from the unconscious does it get into the conscious? You can't. If it just flows regularly, then it will remain either unconscious or will overwhelm the conscious. So you need a diminishment. It's like balances the equation to deal with. Like I said, from moichin to midas, for example, regular intellect to midas, you don't need necessarily diminished. You contemplate on something, it brings you to a feeling. But if you want to connect it to the higher unconscious, that has to come through here. So hairs play the role And maybe, I don't remember here, but in Kabbalah it talks actually why hair grows in certain parts of the body. Well, everywhere there's hair, but on top of your head, the beard, you have hair in the underarms, you have hair around the genital area. You understand why? So it speaks because here in those levels, in those places, let me just... is like, even physically, the hair grows in these places because that's where the most perspiration is. And that's where you need the most protection. But in the Kabbalah, it talks about the hair in each one. Like I think by the arms, it's connected to Midas. By the brain, obviously most hair is on the head, because the head is what releases most heat. But that's where the meichin. So wherever there's hair, it's always a sign of these type of so-called a necessity for diminishing the flow to next level. It's like a jump from one level to the next. So, in that context, so the Zohar speaks about at length about these different hairs. For example, right in the beginning of the Zohar there, in this piece in Idr Rabbah, it's not brought here, but I'll just give you an example. He says there's two psukim, which contradict each other. One says, give me the Zohar a second here, right? So he says like this, the beginning of the Zohar, I believe. He speaks at length about the beard, the zok, and the hair. Then he says, that one place it says, like here, that the hair is dark like a raven, and then it says, says Yasif Kusaya v'Lusha Kutlak Chiver. Saresha Ka'amar Naka, that the hair on the head is white like tzemer, like wool. It's a pasuk in Daniel. So he asks, what's this, dark or white? That's a different contradiction. So he says that's diknei law and diknei tata. He says the higher hairs and the lower hairs. So there's a whole discussion about different levels of hair. I just want to point that out. So this particular Ayin Beis is talking about one piece in the Zohar, explained by the Alter Rebbe, which talks about the two different, talks about the reasons of the Torah are compared to hair. So after my introduction, now we're going to go. Why should the reasons of Torah be compared to hair? The answer is I just said. Because hair has that paradox. Because Torah has two elements. There's what's revealed and what's concealed. So what better metaphor for that is hair? So we have the two places, that's what he brings, and I'm going to read it now inside. It's all bringing out, as I said, the whole point that he wants to bring out, that there's a revealed dimension to Torah and there's a concealed. In the concealed part of Torah, there's also revealed and concealed, and in the revealed part is revealed and concealed.
There's a lot of things that express revealed and concealed. Speech and thought. Why use hair?
Speech and thought is not a radical jump. Thought does keep things concealed. You need a radical jump. You need a jump that only hair can. So
it's not a cause and effect kind of.
Yeah, look, hair is the ultimate symptom. Yes, it's like strands.
Like a transformer of electricity goes into very tiny wire.
Yeah, that's basically it. Why God didn't create why God created us differently without hair and some other thing, that you'll have to talk to God. Yeah. But yeah. So he says like this now. So it's like this. So even in the revealed Torah, the etzem thing remains concealed and hidden from comprehension. Remember, those that know are familiar with this language. This is easy for them. You're asking it because you never heard it before, so you're not used to this type of language. But this language is it's a struggle for us because we don't learn it this way. But when you know the Zohar inside out, this is just the basic language. This is the language of. So just see it as something that's new. That's really what it comes down to. Okay, so he says like this. And I'm just reading now inside. We learned this now, different versions. The Alter Rebbe's version, Tzemach Tzedek's version. And now he's going to say it like this. I just want to see one thing here. Okay. Then he says, "Va'inyan dehine b'idra rabba isa." This is literally the language in Idra Rabba. As I said, Idra Rabba is the great gathering, the large gathering of the 10 students of. It's printed in right here in Zeir Pashanase. So he says Idra Rabba, to be specific, is page 136a, I believe. Yeah, 136a. Right, the Achim sometime, but go to the Reish Italian. Let me read the Zohar a second. I think it'll be helpful. She says, Tana, we learn. Go to the Reish and the skull of the head. Italian Aleph Alfe Ribi V'Ribi Rivovin Keitze Desaira Uchman. In the skull of the head, Italian is how would you say here? Italian are clinging. 10,000, elef alfi rivui, tens of thousands, v'ribui revovim, and thousands, and thousands of thousands, and tens of thousands of hair, of strands of hair. Keitze, I would say, strands of hair. Uchman, dark. Umistabchen dabeda, and they are entangled with one another. This is what he says here. Umisarvin dabeda, and they mix with one another. Misarvin, so they're tangled and mixed with one another. Yeah. How many hairs do we have on the head? Not me. You. Thousands, right? Exactly. Yeah. The less chushbon linimun. That's chushbana. He means there's no real count to nimin. Nimin is threads. The chol keitz v'keitz is dachidin be, because all the strands are connected. Dachyin u'misavin. Here's what it says: Dachyin u'misavin, positive and negative. U'mikan isagdan taima araisa, and from here isagdan are the reasons of the Torah. B'dachya b'misav. That's how Zohar. So you see right away that the Zohar is really the source of this whole topic. So mekan isagdan, from here isagdan, you can say, not merge, unite the reasons of the Torah. B'dachya b'misav, which is a cryptic term here, means basically from the positive and negative. The ayin base teaches this mitzvah sasa, mitzvah sleisasa. B'kol inun sitrin d'inun dachin. All these sides, which are dachin, b'kol inun sitrin d'inun misav. Yasmin keitzim mistabchim v'tkifim and hanshim tkifim b'kol keitzim says Yasmin nimen tan altalin. Okay, we'll stop here. He goes on with at length here, discussing all the whole hair situation. If you want, I can print out this is Aramaic, to find a Hebrew translation. Yeah. And this is one of the most cryptic parts of Zohar, just for the record. Idra Rabba and Idra Zuta are known to be the most difficult parts of Zohar. So this is what we're handling here. High level Kabbalah here. Okay? You call yourself a Kabbalist? Okay, so now he's explaining the Zohar. This is Zohar. I just read the Zohar. So he says, what is this talking about? Kafsesis taltam shachris ke'erev shein seides de Zohar b'chinas seides shcheres dachidim beidachim mesaven. So it says, this is the dark hairs of the curls, the locks of hair, like the dark of a raven. These are seides de Zohar. That's what the Zohar is saying. That's what he goes on to say. These are the hairs of Zohar. B'chinas seides shcheres. These are the level of dark hairs. Dachidim beidachim mesaven. Cling to it. The dachin and mesaven, the positive and the negatives. Umikan is achidin taima raisa bedachin mesava, as I just read. And from here, it cling the root of the reasons of Torah. Again, the positive and the negative. Hairi the time of Torah, but mitzvah sesa, mitzvah snesa, and is the zah. So he sums up. What is the Zohar saying? That the reasons of Torah, in other words, the inner reasons of Torah in the positive mitzvahs, and that's negative mitzvahs, come from the hairs of zah. That's the Zohar. U'petikun Zohar Isa, another place, the Zohar says, Tikun Zohar, v'dal sereshcha kargaman, that the locks on your head, like purple gaman, hein taimid Torah, ve'im b'chinas seides de nukva. They are the reasons of Torah, and that's the seides of nukva. So which one is the reasons of Torah? Is it this or is it that? Is it Zah or is it Malchus? Which domain? And in truth, they don't contradict each other. This is literally the language of the Alter Rebbe. Why? Because the intellect of emotions. Now remember, I said the flow, how it works is, it starts with the crown, right? Atik, unconscious, the conscious mind, the emotions. But the emotions and the mind work like this. There's emotions in the mind, and there's mind in the emotions. We learned this at length back in chapters. You remember we learned the chapter on the 130s that he's going to refer to. Yeah, Yisrael Sabatun. How does it work? A child grows up. When you're young, your emotions are dominating. Education and maturity trains the emotions. Don't cry for everything. Not everything you have to discipline. So basically, an intellect disciplines the emotions. The emotions come to a point, they don't just go by pure impulse. They become to a point where they say, thank you, please. You don't have a tantrum. It's more methodical. It's the way it's supposed to work. I say supposed. Because I know adults that have tantrums, they just don't show it. They're hiding it. So okay, so this is how it works. So the emotions are being matured. So you have the intellect in the emotions. Then you come to a point where you start growing into being able to have intellect without emotion. To really be detached and objectively think about something. You got a 5-year-old child, or an 8-year-old child, a 10-year-old child. You can expect from them discipline, but you can't expect them yet to be sitting and abstractly deciding on something. They don't have that objectivity yet. They don't have that detachment yet. They have other qualities, but then comes a point, bar mitzvah for a man, bas mitzvah for a girl, where the moichen de gadlus begins to enter. What's moichen de gadlus? Intellect on its own, not as it relates. A 10-year-old, for that matter, 13-year-old also, but the beginning process of maturity. A child, essentially, if you sum it up, a child is impulsive, emotional, and even the intellect that you can teach them discipline is all about controlling your emotion maybe, but not, you can't yet say that they've come to a place of maturity. So they're maturing, their emotions are beginning to mature and be disciplined, but they still are primarily driven by their needs. Then comes a point where you can begin to become detached and control. You can't expect a 5-year-old to fast on Tisha B'Av. That's why putting on film, you have to have control over your body. You can't expect that of a child. Just like you don't expect of a newborn to go to the bathroom. I mean, you have to have, it's levels of control over yourself. By bar mitzvah, bas mitzvah, that's when, Meichen de Gadlus, you can begin to expect the beginnings. By 20, it's called the end of the process of Meichen de Gadlus, which means that's when the brain has developed enough. The last closures are done, the last maturity. That still doesn't mean you don't mature further, but it means you're now at a point where you're able to get married, for example. Be responsible. Be independently responsible. That doesn't mean it happens at age 20, it's a process. But around that age, that's when you have that Shmenesser l'chuppah. Ben Esrim, you could be Yerush b'nichse Avav. You can then inherit, You can inherit that because you could be able to control property and inherit, be an heir, right? So, and then begins the process. Ben Shleishim, then Ben Shleishim the Kayach, Ben Esrim the Kayach, Ben Esrim the Kayach, Ben Shleishim, Ben Esrim. Yeah. Anyway, Ben Arbaim Labina, and then of course we all know where it goes from there.
Everybody says that unanimously.
Until Ben Meir Shana over a bottle min ha'elam. Chassidus says, not over a bottle min ha'elam al yusat, that the helam of Hester of the world no longer affects you.
It's too fast.
That's what one of the comedians said. He says, life, the only difficult life is the first 100 years, he says. Huh?
No problem.
Okay. Why are you depressing a young man here? I think it's life is beautiful.
Get through it.
So I'm just speaking about the maturity process. So in this Meichen and Midas, it's also like this. That's where you're going back to a topic that we learned much earlier. In the interface of Ayin Beis, so you're bringing the divine transcendent, right, Eira Blikvul, and trying to connect it to Eira Gvul, which is the divine immanent, that relates to existence. More microcosmic, that's Meichen and Midas. A little more macrocosmic is Keser, your Rotzen and your faculties, your Keches Pnimim and your Rotzen. But more specifically, Meichen and Midas, because the mind connects to the unconscious. The Midas are more related to existence. We kept talking about this a number of times. So we spoke about Ovis and Matan Torah. The Ovis draw down from Meichen into Midas. Yisrael Sabat Funa. That's the Midas in Meichen. So it's already mature intelligence, but it's intelligence as it relates to existence, if you remember. Meichen and Midas was Yisrael plane, was the maturity of the emotions. Then Matan Torah brings a whole new energy from Keser, which is Er Chadash, a Yichud Abba Ve'imei Elon, as he called it, the inner, the higher, the unity of the higher Chachma Bina. This is very relevant to our discussion here, as we'll see in a moment. Because what we're talking about is the interface between the outer Torah and the inner Torah. The outer Torah deals with existence. It's the Torah as it relates to existence. Like we're learning here, the laws of the domains on Shabbos, private domain, public domain. The laws of what he said about money, financial laws, that when someone controlling money, it's a chazakah that they own it, and if you claim it, the burden of proof is upon you. This is the Torah addressing existence, addressing arguments and discussions and issues we have on earth. Then we learned how the Torah addresses on Ruchnius level, Amach Parah v'Chamer. These ideas can also be learned in spiritual levels. A parah, the cow, the donkey, spoke about in Aveda, the donkey is coldness, and how you transform a person's coldness into through study of Torah, the yoke that a donkey carries. But it still relates Torah to existence. Then there's Torah Natzilus. He also explained it's the divine, but it's still connected to Seder Shtalshus, to Gvul. Then there's the Torah that's Shashim Lefonav, that's God's delights. You're learning Torah. What does Torah tell us about God? Not what it tells us about life. If you want to know halacha, Torah tells you, here, Reuven and Shimon, two people have an argument. Torah tells you, here's what you do. This one says, I own it. This one says, I own it. This one says, it's all mine. This one says, half of it is mine. You owe me 5,000? No, I owe you 1,000. That's Torah dealing with dealing with the world. But then you want to know Torah, its pure form. David HaMelech was punished because he saw the Torah as it relates to him, how it helped him. He said, Zmira Sheilichukecha, it's my song. It helped him transcend his pains. Great. But the ultimate Torah is God's delights. It's telling you about God, not about you. And that is the inner, that's Taimei Torah, as he said. That remains concealed. So how does that relate to? That's what the Zohar is saying, he's saying, basically. The Zohar is saying that the reasons of Torah cling and relate to the hairs. Because on one hand, you see them. But what you see is a very narrow flow. What you're seeing is not what you're getting. That's what hair represents. It's revealing you there's something there. You pull the hair, there's a nerve. Someone will say, what's behind that nerve? Oh, 1 second, it's a whole neurons going on inside the brain. So the hairs reveal to you a little. That's what he's saying. That's what the Zohar is basically saying. Cyrus of Zoh. So Cyrus of Zoh, where are they rooted, as he said? I'm just going back here. It's rooted in it says like this. is explaining now the mind of Zah, the intellect within our emotional lives. Okay? I'm bringing it back now. I spoke in general about the reasons of Torah and so on, but I'm bringing it back. The intellect within our emotional lives. In other words, we're talking now Yisrael, the level of Yisrael, which is how your emotions, you could say it's like a child, how emotions are being regulated by the mind. Where does that originate from? It originates from, he says, Cyrus, so our conscious intellect of your emotions is rooted in the Cyrus, in the hairs of the unconscious. How? Remember the Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek added this line in the Rebbe Rashab. The Abba v'Ima makablim hamechin memazal v'neitzer v'nake. Abba v'Ima Chachman Bina received the intellect from the two mazalas, neitzer v'nake. Those are two of Arich Ampin's 13 strands. Remember Cyrus of Arich Ampin. Umashpia neitzer l'zah. And it transmits them to Zah. I just want to compare here. How does it do it? Yeah. Good. And now the Rebbe Rashab, here's what he adds that does not say in the previous Maimorim. V'yesh leimar shezeh b'chinas gadlus hameichen. You can say this is the level of mature intelligence.
What do you mean, Meichen is up?
No, I think I learned it one way originally. Now I'm thinking differently. Yeah, it looks like that's what he's saying. This is the level of godless hamechen, mature intellect, that you draw down through work. This in general is a transmission that's higher than the cosmic order. It says elsewhere in the beard of Tzidkas Pizreine. Okay.
Maybe he's talking about the Meichen that's in Mazel and Neitzer.
I was thinking that too first, but it's not the Kabbalim HaMeichen and Mazel. Avon Kabbalim HaMeichen, I don't think he means that Kabbalim HaMeichen, because the Yesh Lemer is coming after Mashpia Meisim L'Zah. Let's read on, because I think the next parentheses may help understand this. I think he wants to distinguish this from Meichen de Nukve. What's the difference in Meichen of Malchus and the Meichen of Zah? So he's saying it's Gadlus HaMeichen. That's what I think he's saying. Or maybe it's a higher level. It's hard to say. Let me see what he says here in Tzemach Tzedek again.
Well, what?
One second. Just give me a second. Because this is a footnote explaining the Tzemach Tzedek's line. I need to study it more because it's not so simple.
How did we?
Because first I understood it that it meant that there are three levels here. Well, three. There's Meichen, Abba ve'Ima received from the Mazalas of Archampin, and they transmit it to Zah. Then there's Meichen of Nukva. So there's three here. There's the Meichen Abba ve'Ima, that would be Gadlus HaMeichen. There's how they transmit it to the Midas, that would be the Meichen in the Midas. And then there's Meichen in Nukva, that's a lower level. Okay.
That's how we learned it by Yisrael Sabbath Torah.
That's how I would learn it here too. The problem is here, especially when I look at Tzemach Tzedek, he's saying, how does the Meichen of Zah where does it come from? It comes from the Cyrus of Arachampin. And the Abba ve'Ima is just explaining technically how it travels. So then, why is he adding this whole piece about Abba ve'Ima? What's missing? Maybe that's why the Rebbe Rashab is insisting that's Meichen the Galas. I'm not sure. Now I'm learning it, I understand it more, that Abba ve'Ima is just explaining how the process, how does it get from the hairs of Arachampin to Midas? It travels through the Abba ve'Ima. The parentheses is hard to know which is Gadlus HaMeichen. I have to think about it some more. Let me read on, because I think it will emerge when we learn on. Another aspect of how the Cyrus from Aracham, V'gam Keitze, the Cyrus Aracham, and also the strands, Keitze, the edges, the points. It must be the ends of the hairs of Aracham Atzmei, of Aracham itself. In other words, not through Abba Ve'ima. Maka be'ed of Zah. They strike the back of Zah. That would be like the long hair that falls back. So the hair is bypassing the Abba Ve'ima. Maybe that's what he's distinguishing. That's it. What's the Gam? There's two ways how this works. So if it goes to Abba Ve'ima, that's Gadlus HaMeichen. If it bypasses it, it's Meichen and Midas. That's maybe the prat.
I thought maybe that it was the Makif that woke up in Zoh, so it would be Mekapel from Abba Ve'ima.
Well, what? I don't understand what you just said.
The Makkah, it's like the Makif, wakes up Zoh, so it's Mekapel from...
No, but it's not. But where did you get Mekabel? It doesn't say anywhere such a thing.
Is that like Cyrus the Nukva?
No. No.
I'm saying the Makabah area.
No, Nukva is Malchus. There's nothing to do. We're talking Zah now. Zah is the heart. Nukva is not. We're not talking about Nukva at all here. That comes later. She says, "Gam Keitze decided Makabah area of the Zah by Dezem Bechalak Hadas the Zah the Beis Meichen the Chesed the Gvura." Okay, yeah. So now, one second. So this is the second thing here. So one thing is the strands of hair travel through Abba Ve'ima and go into Zah. Another thing is that the what do I call it? The ends of the hair of Arachampin, Atzmai, Makkah, strike the back of Zah. By Dezen, through that it divides the Das of Zah, which is also the intellect of Zah, to two intellects, Chesed and Gvur. Fine. In the full sense of wisdom. Wisdom as it is independent intellect. Let's put it this way. So now he says, so I looked it up. There he says in the Maimon, there he says, there he speaks about striking the hair on the back. He says, by striking the hair on the back, that and there he says, that causes there to be a union face to face, not a back. Hainu. That means that there should radiate the inner dimension of the intellect. He explains there's two ways that emotions, that you can guide your emotions, let's say during davening, to come to love. You can force them. You can basically, your mind can compel and say, I'm not going to allow my feelings to be drawn, let's say, to material things. I'm compelling them to commit to godliness.
That's because of the explanation?
But that's by force, huh?
That's because it explains?
No, not explains. This is force. It's just pure self-control. It's like, you want to eat, you don't let yourself eat. It's kafir. Basic force. Total domination. He says, but there's a second way that you do it, that you train them. And that naturally they have no temptation for opposite things. That's training. She says that's what happens through the work.
That's going through the back?
No. Through the back initially is the other way. It's forcing. But that brings through that, then you can work on it and to bring it to the level that it connects.
Yeah, can you just run through that order? How does it work?
Yeah, let's learn it inside. Things as we have patience, we can learn everything inside. So, but tetzava. So there's a beer. He speaks like this. Speaking about Amalek. So by Amalek it says, "Ein akisei shalom ve'ein Hashem shalom ve'ein akisei shalom." Right? Amalek kos yutke. It says that he covered up the yutke. It says in the pasuk. That means he separated yutke from vavke. He wanted to separate the higher and the lower. Meichen and midas, basically. So Ein Hashem Shalom, the name should not be complete, and the kisei and the throne shouldn't be complete. She says, Hine Shem Havaya hu bezah. Shem Havaya is in Zah. V'kisei b'malchus. And the throne is Malchus. Uli is bechinas Havaya Shalom, hainu she'iyah is chalkus meichen chachma bina. And being that Havaya is complete, when Havaya is complete, which means hainu she'iyah is chalkus meichen chachma bina. When Havaya is complete, what do you have? You have Chochmah Bina is separated. And Das divides into two. That comes from the Zohar. This is coming, I think, Zohar Eitz Chaim. This comes to ends of the strands of hair of Arich Hampim. Sheyerid Neged Kasvin, the Zah. They descend on the shoulders of Zah. The same idea, the back, the shoulders. Ma'cherov, from the back. Shehu HaMechalek. That's the Kabbalistic terminology. So what do you have? When you have Havaya complete, Havaya is, you have Zah. What do you have? A complete Zah. You have Chochmah Bina is Chochmah Bina, and the hair from Arich Ampin descends on Zah and separates Chesed and Gvura, which is the two sides. In other words, so you have four Moichin basically. But it's all within Zah.
This is making yourself.
Yeah. V'hinei zeh b'chinas vav ksavis. Something's wrong here. I'm saying zeh b'chinas vav ksavis vav kei malchus de zah. V'hinei zeh b'chinas vav ksavis. Okay. Now he says there's another level which is Malchus of Zah, which is also from Zah, but this is Vavke now. So even though this is also Midas, Shem Tivim, there are Midas that are natural feelings. Hem b'chinas katnus, v'hem b'chinas katnus. And they're in a state of immaturity. Sheyachal li es kol hayom. Sorry. Like yesh midas shem tivim v'hem b'chinas katnus sheyachal li es kol hayom. V'yeshu begalus hamechen kamei b'shas hatfila. So there's the midas how they are all day in a state of immaturity, and then there's a state when they come to a mature intellect. That's like during davening. Shalibe mislad bizbananuse. When his heart gets ignited, mislat, through his contemplation. Okay, I'm just skipping because I don't want to read every word here. It's too complicated to read the word. So he says, in Ikka Gili Alev is to be the real point of your emotional awakening. Gili Alev, the revelation of your heart, is to be in a form of Pnimius. Shetekal b'chinas Yisrael de la'ela. Ponim b'ponim. That the Midas should be receiving face to face, straight from Yisrael de la'ela. Ki hu chayecha mokar achayim mokar ha'tainugim eretz zev eschol v'daz yarim dvoshe l'shanim Hashem. However, ach b'golas Mitzrayim. However, in Golas Mitzrayim. Hu b'chol yem sheb'chol la'ela yeredes l'biyah. This is now, the work every day, the regular day when we have to struggle in this world. And there's a diminishment of the whole flow. Then afterwards, then you have an estate where it's back to back. You're not getting this full flow because you're in a state of like Golus. Following? But then the goal is that from the back you should come back to the front. How does he get to that place? I'm just looking. Okay, so here he says like this. So this is the work a person does during davening, that a person contemplates. And he compels his love to go, forces it. So this is a state where he's forcing. He doesn't have any pleasure in doing it. He's doing it because he's forced. Then from this acher ba'acher, this state of so-called just doing it like a servant, essentially. You come to panim panim, kaliv sam shachas meichel, b'chinas keitzad, yair panav, Hashem shalom. Being, however, because the root of these Cyrus are coming from Arachampin, so even though they're now on your back, you're able to return and connect to the Pnimius.
Do we understand what the effect is that makes it happen?
So I'm just trying to see how that happens. 1 second. Okay, he doesn't go into the specifics, but that's the basic point that he wants to say here. So basically, to summarize it, he says like this: that Meichen de Zah Shoshim B'Sayas Darcham Abba Kam Meichen. Then he says Gam Keitz de Sayas Darcham Pen Atzmi Makab Erev de Zah. He's explaining what that means. So in Torah Er he says, look in Torah Er, and there he says that first it comes in from the back, in a very external way, and that leads you to Panim B'Panim Hainu Shameidim Pnimis Hameichen Lias Ava B'Derech Mel Lerak B'Derech Yivachlich. That your love should come naturally to you, and not in a form of being compelled. Like he says elsewhere. Now he adds, and here I think is where it all comes together. Then earlier in chapter 134 in this boy explained the all this is about intellect that relates to emotions, not core intelligence. So I think Kol Zeh is including probably the previous parentheses too. I think that's what he's referring to. I think the distinction is, the two ways is probably what I said. If it comes through Abba Ve'ima, from the Cyrus, then it's like how the intellect is maturing the emotions that way. If it comes the other way, it's external emotions. It's external relationship. However, in Torah Eir, he says the purpose is also to come to Pnimius, and that would be Atzmus HaMeichen, but Atzmus HaMeichen as it relates to Midas. Meichen Diyanika. Basically the level of Yisrael, not Yisrael Sabot Tfuna. That's essentially what he's saying here.
And a deep relationship between love and Midas.
Yeah. Because bottom line, he's saying everything is shaykh to Midas here. That's essentially this level of here, we're talking about Midas connected to Meichen. So in other words, is the outer dimension of Torah. Yeah.
Pretty deep.
Yeah, it's very deep. And I think it now explains. Because he brings here Etzem Meichen Dezah Zeh HaNista Shal Pisad.
I think they say the same thing.
What?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
obvious level that we mentioned so far. And shall be sought.
Yeah, yeah. Then he goes on, V'atzim is bechinus madrega zu. What's that? Beis Meichen, 1 second. And the core level and the core measure and level, this level, and he says now in the parentheses he adds, Haino atzmis ham shachas b'chinas arechampin v'chub bezah, so b'chinas atzmis hameicha mamish. No, it's clear the other way. He's saying clearly now, Atzmis HaMechen is the way it's in Abba Ve'ima, not the way it comes in Midas. Okay, bottom line is, the core level, which core level? The core of the transmission from Arich Hampin and Chachma Bina and Zah. No, it's not as it relates to Midas. We're not talking now intellect as it relates to Midas. We're talking now Yisrael Saba V'Tfuna, so to speak, or even higher probably.
That's the Oshana okay. Right. It's Penimis. So.
One second. I'm just bottom line, even the Panim B'Panim, even the Pnimis is still relating to Midas. But the core intellect, and the core Arich Hampin, and the core intellect, that ain't EF Shalom B'Yizgalas B'Chinas Tam, Gam Le'al Pisod. That cannot come revealed in any reason, even not a secret reason, even not, in other words, a pisad, even a reason that is according to an esoteric reason. Rak b'chinas Cyrus the Zah, boy is galas the b'chinas Heichalis the Zah. Only from the Cyrus of Zah. Only only in a very diminished flow does it come revealed in the chambers of Zah. That's what he says here now.
Chambers are a vehicle of Gilui.
Chambers is where the Gilui is, where the learning is taking place. Okay, so it is the three levels, so it is correct. There's the core intellect, or the core Arich Hampin, and the core intellect remain above. So he said Gadlus HaMechen before. Is he still talking about Gadlus HaMechen and how Abba Ve'ima influences Midas? Matures them. But it's still all related to Midas. That's what he's saying. Looks like it. Or maybe it's a higher level, and that's the outside. Not clear. It's not so clear. Okay. Two ways you can learn it. You can learn that if it comes through Abba Ve'ima, there's a more of a maturity because it's coming through Abba Ve'ima, the hair, from Arich to Midas. Or you can learn, and then the lower level is back to back, so it only goes on the back. And yet even that purpose is also to lead you to a higher place, a maturity. Or you can say that both ways, Moichin is maturing the Midas, but the Etzem Moichin remains concealed. That's what he's basically saying. I think the first way is more correct, what I just said.
I didn't see the difference, I'm sorry. It sounds like you're saying two separate things.
There are two reasons given here, or two ways how the Moichin of Zah, the intellect of emotions, receive from the unconscious, from Arich Hampin, from the Cyrus of Arich Hampin. One is, he says, it goes through Abba Ve'ima, Mazel of Neitzer V'Nake, and they're Mashpia. A second way is because the hair falls on the back of Zah and divides Das into the two. Those are two things he says. One way you can learn is he's talking about what are the differences between these two. The first way, it's more maturing, Gadlus HaMechen. Since it's going through Abba Ve'ima are maturing the emotions. The second way is the back. It's not mature. It's forcing the emotions. It's not training them, it's forcing them to do what has to be done. And yet, even that, the purpose is also through work to reach a place of that it should also be trained. But initially it's the back. And that's the difference in the two. Or you can say that's really two things combined in one. I think what I just said is the more correct way. It sounds more correct. The other way would be two things combined in one would be that from the Cyrus of Arich Hampin goes into Midas. It goes to Abba Ve'ima, so they help mature. They help you get from the back to the front. But I don't know which way, because it seems like there's two separate things, and the parentheses separate them. So it looks to me like it's almost like two stages. But regardless, this is all not core intellect. This is all intellect as it relates to emotions. That's for sure. That's as clear as day. That he says specifically. The Atzmis is beyond, and the only way you can get it is through Cyrus. You can't even have you don't even know the secret of it. It's so concealed. And now he adds another parenthesis and says, Yeshlem b'dezer b'madregas Atzilus. You can say all this is on the level of Atzilus. Hecholos dezah. V'hainu shegam neshamas Atzilus mashemassigim taimeter zerak b'chinas Cyrus. No, it's also the souls of Atzilus, when they comprehend the reasons of Torah, it's only through the hairs of Zah. That's what the Zohar means, the hairs. Look in Tanya 30, chapter 39. The neshamas stand in the chambers and the rooms of Bria and Yetzirah, and they benefit from the reflection of the Shekhinah, of the divine. And that's the reflection of their Torah and their work. We can say the neshamas Atzilus. Similarly, you could say is also in the souls of Atzilus, that they're there in the Heichel, and that's where they benefit from what they are able to achieve. But the time of Torah is only from the Cyrus. That's basically he's saying. So it's like a Medurin. He's explaining what means the Heicholos of Zah. Basically the words, what is it, the Heicholos of Zah? He's comparing those chambers to these chambers. That's all he's really saying. It's an explanation of it. Now comes the second pasuk. Now we're going to Nukva. Okay? Well, first he says, and this is the meaning of the clumps or the edges of the locks of hair. These are the hairs of Zah, Shebem Talyan Dachin Misavin. In them is cling, the positive and the negative. This means this is the revelation of the reasons, the secrets of Torah. Are revealed in the chambers of Zah. Okay. Now comes the second lower level. This apparently is the Sod, that there's the Nigla of the Sod, basically. So it's the Nigla of the Sod. So this is the Nigla of the Sod. Yeah, this is the second interpretation here in Eretera. Good. Let's go on now. Now comes the same thing from the intelligence, the mind of Chabad in Malchus, in Nukva, in the feminine, Shesharsha beside the Zah, that are rooted in the hairs, in the strands of hair of Zah. They cannot come into the world of Biyah also only like strands of hair, narrow flow. V'zeo dalos reishcha kargoman. And this is that the locks on your head are like argoman. This lower level. U'lechein b'primis ha'teira yesh nigla v'nister. And that's why in the inner dimension of Torah there is revealed and concealed. V'chein b'chitzeni yasei Torah. And also in the outer dimension of Torah. And now he explains it. For who the b'chin is dalas v'dalas reishcha kargoman zeo tam ha'nigla mamish. The level of Dalas Reishcha Kargomon, the locks of hair on your head are like Kargomon. That's literally the revealed reason. Kamay ukim ameina v'aloch v'ametz mechaver al varaya. Yeah.
Basically, they both have the exact same pattern.
Yeah. Okay, yes, that's what it is. And that's just side is the nukva. That's just a diminished flow of nukva. The intellect itself of Malchus, of nukva, are beyond, above comprehension in biyah. V'zeu ha'nister shel zeh hatam. And that's the concealed, the hidden of this reason. Shaloi b'ala degili. Remember we said the axioms that can be explained. Now that's there. V'chein b'zah, the same now in zah. Bottom line is here, nigla the Torah is malchus, pnimis ha-Torah is zah. That's the point here. So he just explained how in nigla the Torah you have pnimis and chetzenis. You have nister and nigla. The nigla is in biyah, but it's only coming from this side, from the hair. The core intelduct in nukva, in atzilus, remains a sod. That's why we don't have. Now the same thing in zah. You have this pattern, as you said. V'chein b'zah, b'chinas kavtzeisov. Taltalim, zeh ha-nigla shall be asod. Kavtzeisov taltalim is the locks of hair that we have in zah. That's the nigla al pisod. That's the revealed part in the secret. The etzma meichen de zah, and the etzem meichen, and the core intellect of zah, zeh ha-nister shall be asod. That's the concealed dimension within the sod. Now he explains the b'derech klal b'chinas malchus b'chinas chitzenias Torah, because in general malchus is the level of the outer dimension of Torah. Malchus peh, Torah shebal peh, like we say in Pasuk Chol. Malchus is the mouth. Torah shebal peh, bal peh, Torah that you say with your mouth, by heart. Karin Allah. Malchus peh, Torah shebal peh karin. You call it Torah shebal peh, the hainu b'chinas hanigla. So nigla, chetzenis ha-Torah is malchus. V'zah b'chinas pnimis ha-Torah. And zah is inner dimension of Torah. Ubishneim yesh nigla v'nister, and both of them have a revealed and a concealed. The b'chinas ha-nigla, the revealed, the dimension why they are sightless. The revealed dimension comes through the strands of hair. Ub'chinas ha-nister zeum etzem ha-mechen. And the hidden is the core intelligence. Okay, good. V'hainu the benigla Torah b'derech klal, the b'derech klal b'chinas hamalchus in yatam hanigla b'chinas side is the nukva. This means that the nigla Torah, the revealed part of Torah in general, which is in general the level of malchus, the revealed reason comes from the sidus, the ears of nukva. V'alzeu sha'ama b'tikkun zeir, and now this is what it says in Tikkun Zeir: v'dalas reishcha kargomon hein taimei Torah. This is what the Tikkun Zeir is saying. He's not reconciling the two. The taimei Torah he's talking about is the nigla. That's the locks of hair on your head. The dalsa, the lock on your head is kargomon. The reasons of Torah. Otama nigla the chetzenis ha-Torah. There he's talking about the revealed reason of chetzenis ha-Torah. V'atama nister, and the hidden reason b'zeu ma'mechen atzman de nukva. And the secret and the hidden reason in this is from the intelligence itself of Nikva. Or pnimis ha-Torah, she b'chinas zah datzilus, and the inner dimension of Torah, which is zah datzilus, ha-seid ha-nigla b'zeh b'chinas side is the zah. The seid that's nigla, the secret part that's revealed, is the hairs of zah. V'zeyin kavtzeis of taltalim hamavur b'idr rabba, and that's the kavtzeis of taltalim that's talked about in idr rabba. Idr rabba is talking about those lumps of locks of hair that are dark. And this nister there is that doesn't even come in any revealed sod either. That's from the core intellect of Zah. So you see, we keep talking about the core intellect of Zah. We're not talking about core intellect higher than Zah. That's all together. Yeah.
So probably shchoros in the pasuk, the Zohar translates it as like nister the Torah.
Yeah.
And Agamon is the nigla the Torah.
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah. Yeah. Correct.
In general, but we say that's only
And in each one, there's a nigla and a nister.
Exactly right. You got it right. I'm sorry. I had to go through this because I got to crack through this.
I thought the purple was the external part of the nigla, and the black was the external part of the nister.
Correct. That's what he's saying. He's saying the pasuk Kavtzev Taltim is talking about Pnimis HaTorah, And the pasuk with Dalas Reish Gargomen is Nigla the Torah.
But the purple and the black are both referring to the external aspects of both.
It doesn't say that. It doesn't say specifically.
Specifically, it's referring to the hair straps.
The psukim we know are talking about that, and then each one has two dimensions. They're both here, so they both are reflecting a concealed dimension.
Yes.
In the Nigla, yeah. What I don't understand is then what's the atzmis meichen of meichen?
Like Abba V'Imei Elohim.
He's not even in the picture here.
No. I'll take it completely.
In other words, no, but forget about Avi Loma. What about atzmus meichen on the top of the page? It's not even Lo Al Pi Sod. It's not even Al Pi Sod.
That's Chuk de Zoh. In Zoh.
Right, Gam Lo Al Pi Sod.
So that's the same level that the Nishter is not revealed? Okay. Yeah, Lefi Zeh Yesh Leimer. Okay, let's finish here. Lefi Zeh Yesh Leimer. According to this, we can say that Niglish Al Pi Sod Zeh Ater Kameshi Beruchnis. According to this, we can say, oh boy, that Niglish Al Pi Hasod, meaning we're talking now Kavtsev Sotaltlin. The Nigla Al Pi Hasod, that which revealed to us. He's explaining. I remember till now we were learning that's Chetzeni Satera. When we learned about Machle Parah B'Chamer and Bria Tzir Natzilas, right? We said that was Chetzeni Satera. So now he's saying the opposite. That's actually the revealed of the concealed, not the concealed of the revealed.
Right. This is what Shaykh opens. Okay.
No. Till now we were learning. Before this chapter, we didn't yet know that there are levels in each of the two.
That's true.
We spoke about outer Torah, inner Torah. So what did he say? The outer Torah deals with existence. That's where you can say his kashrus. What does outer Torah include? A Torah in Asiyah, Torah in Bri Yitzira, where they talk about the ideas in Ruchnis, and the Torah as it talks not Tzilus, how the ideas are not Lakus, but Seder Shtalshus.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what he said, Chetzenius HaTorah.
Right.
And Primus HaTorah was Taimet Torah, the reasons. Now in this chapter we established that you have to say also in the hidden Torah, also is kashrus. So he's saying now, Yeshlem, according to now this explanation that the hidden has a revealed, those explanations that we spoke about in Ruchnius is not the hidden of Gnigla the Torah, is the revealed of Primus HaTorah. So he's turning it back. It's the revealed of Primus HaTorah. That's what he says. Al Pi Zeh, that's what he's saying now. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's a very interesting... Lefi Zeh Hashem da Niglish Al Pi Hasod Zeh Ater Kameshi Beruchnis. That the Niglish Al Pi Hasod, meaning the revealed Al Pi Sod, Al Pi the revealed of the secret, meaning Zoh. That's the Torah, that's the Ruchnis. Kumei Be'esek HaTorah, the Neshamas Began Eden, like the Mursh, what do we call the effort of the work in Torah, the study of Torah, exertion in Torah, immersion in Torah of the souls in Gan Eden, Kumei Torah Satzilas, Dagam Shemidar Bein Hishtalshalas, both things. Kumei Esek B'Torah Kumei Torah Satzilas. Two separate things. The Neshamas in Gan Eden and the way Torah in Atzilas, even though it's speaking about Hishtalshalas as we spoke before, it's talking about, let's say, remember, about the Negoim, about Ehyeh, is that Chochmah is not flowing into Bina and so on. That's the level of the concealed in Torah. However, they can learn it because it's the revealed part according to the Sod. And what is then the secret? What is the real secret, the hidden? Pnimius? That's the pleasure and that's the core intelligence. Like it says elsewhere that the intellect in its core essence is really pleasure. As we shall explain. We will explain how wisdom really, inner wisdom is really pleasure. Because he said before that pleasure is outside of wisdom. He said Hasoga is not Tainug. But that's the part of comprehension that we understand. But there's a part of Chokhmah that, remember we spoke about Riyah, that real wisdom is Hanocha, not... real wisdom is conviction, not intelligence. That's where he's getting to now. That's where the interface, where wisdom travels into beyond wisdom. So he said, as we shall explain. And in general, this is the level of outer Chokhmah and inner Chokhmah. The Pnimius Abba, Pnimius Atik. Because the inner wisdom is really inner Atik, Pnimius, Yeah. So what we're learning here is Chitzenius Chokhmah, in other words. Okay. I'm saying also there's a dimension here. Outer dimension of Chokhmah. It's interesting, this thing with Eya, even though he's using only as an example, it actually is an example in this whole concept. Because what did he say it was? That the dam, that Chokhmah doesn't flow into Bina. What did he say? And therefore does not draw down the energy into Zah. So that itself, that limit itself is the idea we're learning here. Where Zah does not have the whole
picture.
Okay, but that's even when you're healthy, not in the goyim even. Okay, fine.
It's there, but you don't know it.
Okay.
Consciously.
Yeah?
Consciously.
And the goyim
according to what it says elsewhere, this is a maimer, I believe it's a maimer from the Alter Rebbe called Saras Chira. It's printed in Eira Teira Nach, Chelik Beis, a famous maimer. No, it's not in the Goyim. It's talking about Sancherev, that God will humiliate him by shaving. That's the shaving off his head. So he'll be humiliated. Not just he'll be conquered, he'll be humiliated. So he explains there why did he have to do that. So he speaks there about a whole thing. So he says, what does it say there? Hefresh ben Cyrus Harosh le Cyrus Hazokin. He talks there the difference between the Cyrus Harosh, the hairs on the head, and the hair of the beard. The even though both of them come from the leftover of Meichin, like we said, diminished flow, the hairs on the beard are a leftover from the Meichin, the Gadlus, mature intelligence. Mashenkin Cyrus Haresh, the contrast, the hairs on the head, the katnus. They are the leftover from immature intelligence.
Sounds for carrot should be the other way around.
No. Why? No.
Maybe.
The beard is higher than the hair on the head.
That's why. Why? That's the question.
Yud Kimul Tikkun Dikna.
That's only for Zohar.
Well, let's see. A Mavur Sham, and explains there the Gimel Mine Cyrus, that there are three types of hairs. The Vidalas Reshcha, the Kaf Tzev of Talim, the Sad Resha. So as I mentioned before, there's a third pasuk. One says Vidalas Reshcha Kargomon, purple. Another says Kaf Tzev Taltlim Geshecher Erev. And the third Sad Resha Ka'omer Naka is white. Kol Zeh B'chinas Cyrus Haresh. All this is the hairs on the head. Vein halachas the Torah, Yu'un Sham. These are the laws of Torah, as Yu'un Sham, look there. I have to look inside again. I only looked at it quickly before we learned. But basically, he's saying something. And according to this, we can say that according to the nigla, the revealed, even from Pnimis HaTorah, that's Zoh. That this comes from the hairs on the head. The B'derech Klal in general, because in general this is the level of Katnus, the immature. V'hein b'chinas meses v'nevla sheyetzim b'chinas pirud. They're the leftovers and the fallings, like the leaves, that the yetzim that exit in a form of separation. And on this we say Torah bonds itself, the bond, kashrus, kesher. And the secret part of Torah, that's from the hairs of the beard. Like it says, like the good oil, al haresh. That's when they Meshicha, when they what do they call it? Anoint somebody. They pour the good oil on the head and it pours over on the Zokan. That's Huam Shachim B'chinas Primis HaKeser. That's the transmission from inner dimension of Keser. And this is say Teira and Gashim Chad, not just his kashrus. What did he add now? Oh, let's add one final piece here.
It gets a lot deeper.
1 second.
That's the weight here. This is Kesser, higher than Hoffman. Right? All of a sudden, give me the picture.
I have to look it up there. I don't want to speculate. I'm going to look it up. Briefly, what he's saying here is till now we were learning that in Cyrus of Zah, there's 2 dimensions, right? There's the Nigla, that's the Cyrus, and then there's what is concealed, that's beyond the Cyrus. There's the Meichen Atzman of Zah. Let me look it up instead of speculating. I'm going to have to look it up.
I want something that threw in something we hadn't even mentioned.
Their plans are canceled. Well, that's why they can
Okay, I think we should stop here. No, there's also the end of the mimer.
No,
It does.
well done.
We have it now. I have it here, right here.
Everybody has it?
In the new public publication. It may be in the back. It's right here.
What's up?
Page Aleph. I don't know about you. I know. Yeah, there it is. Yeah. Yeah, but this, I want to go back to this piece here before I really continue. The idea is getting clear. It's complicated the way the whole language is, but there's 2 levels of here. And now he's adding a 3rd thing. I have to break through this now. He's adding a 3rd dimension here. He really didn't speak about the beard and the hair and the head before. He didn't mention it. He was just talking about Cyrus of Zah and Cyrus of Nukva. It was Zah Malchus, that all that he was addressing, and Cyrus of Arach Ampin. So I have to just see what he means here with that. It says you unsham, to look there. So let's do that. I have to look there.
Are you looking? What is it? What are you looking?
It's Eira Teira Nach, I believe.
Oh, you got it.
I know where it is. I'm going to look it up. I'm going to look it up and try to clarify this. But good. But we're getting there. We're getting there. So there's the 2 dimensions in Teira. Yeah, very good. Okay, we'll stop here. The second half of chapter 182, 371, page 371 and 372, and we still need to do some more work on this chapter. And we'll stop here. Yeah.